Greetings and salutations and welcome to How Haven Did It. This is the behind the scenes video for session 7? Yes, session 7. So, if you want to know about how I managed to pull off some of the things that happened in our video for session 7, after listening to the story side, you want to hear how I handled some of the problems that came up and how I adapted some of the things to both my party as well as this current situation that happened that evening, by all means keep watching. If you are worried about learning any spoilers about Hoard of the Dragon Queen, stop watching. Go watch something else. However, for those of you still with me, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, Session 7, we are just as they entered the cave. They are about 60 feet inside the cave when we picked up. So we're inside the Dragon Hatchery, if you actually have read along in the campaign book. Now, my players didn't roll so well when they snuck down to check on the cave, and they alerted the guards. They didn't tell them that, hey, you alerted the guards. No, the guards kind of went, that's a really big barbarian and a cleric wearing chainmail sashaying. I think we should sneak back in a little bit and lay an ambush. And that's just exactly what they did. So they snuck back into a corner area that's a hidden section and laid an ambush for the party to come in. Now, they ended up actually waiting a little longer because, of course, at that point in time, back a couple sessions ago, Naharis and Arkin went back up, grabbed the rest of the party, and they all went in. At about the 60-foot mark is when you're about 30 feet from that section, and we end up having the, I don't know what you're going to call it, the axe of warning went off, and the barbarian tingle happened. Time out. Real life happens. This evening, the player that plays Lutao was not able to make it. Now, when this happens in my sessions, I ask the player what they would like to do. Would they like to pick somebody else in the party to run their character for them? Would they like to have their character run by the committee, which basically means all of the players decide what they're going to do? Or would they like to find a way for their player to simply not be there, to bow out, and simply find something else to do? With these options, the player decided that Lutao would step out for a little bit. So we powwowed for a little bit longer, and we came up with that Lutao would step out of the cave and go check in on the hunters, because he was just a little worried that they would box him in, and he wanted to actually see if he could convince them to possibly join in with the party if they needed some backup. Totally plausible, totally something that would actually happen, especially if you walk into a cave and suddenly you realize there's foes ahead of me, let's make sure there's not foes behind me. So Lutao steps out for the rest of the evening. Now, we'll integrate him back into the game during next session. Exactly when he's able to make it, I will bring him back in. Now, depending on the player, if you completely space on me, don't show up, and then don't talk to me in between it, I do kind of penalize my players by not giving them any EXP from that session that evening. I don't use Milestone yet. I'm eventually going to try that because that's still relatively new because I'm old school. So, but if you are a player that can't make it, but you still communicate with me, you come up with an idea of what your character is going to do during that time while they're gone, you get the EXP. I'm not going to penalize you for it. You're still being active in the game, even though you couldn't make it that night. Or if your character is run by the committee or run by somebody else, you still get EXP for that evening. So he's already talked to me a little bit. We're going to powwow a bit more now that the session's over about what happened, and we'll figure out what he's going to do and what he found out and what information he then is going to bring back to the party that the party never even heard about, because there's always that fun mystery of the fact that he's off doing something, and I'm not going to tell the party what he learned from the hunters until he shares it with them. I don't think the party's even put that together yet, but it'll be a nice little thing that's Lutao's. He owns it. He can decide how much he shares and how much he doesn't. Awesome. So that's what's going to happen with Lutao. They get in, they start fighting. This is awesome because the guards decide to surprise ambush them, or try to, by throwing a javelin and trying to take them out and then hiding a little bit more. So the party had been rolling pretty crummy when it came to investigation, and they missed the fact that the guards are standing right here behind, really like an optical illusion. They're tucked just inside the wall, till they throw the javelin. Once the javelin was thrown, the party still kind of missed it, but they did get closer to that side and eventually investigate, find the 4 guards that were standing just inside of the fold of the wall and the optical illusion section of it. Think labyrinth, when you couldn't tell the fact that the labyrinth was right there. So they find them, and we've been playing for about half hour at this point, 45 minutes, and I had a brand new player that decided to actually join. Now, she'd actually been coming along with her mom for a while, about 3 nights at that point, decided she was going to actually join in the campaign. And she'd been sitting there for a while, and I was trying to get her involved as fast as possible, and this seemed like the best, most plausible way, other than have her be captured by them and shoved somewhere, But I figured this would be a cool way for that player to actually introduce themselves to the campaign, was to immediately stab one of their own in front of them, be hiding in one of the guards. And so she stabs the person in front of it. The party then proceeds to kill the rest of them and then threaten her, then decide that she's okay, and they cave in and she ends up joining. So this player was ecstatic by it, by the way. However, I have learned that younger players do like to immediately copy what you do, so she was saying exactly what I said as soon as it, and then I got in trouble with her parents for saying, suck it. So, either way, it was a lot of fun. Great way to introduce a new character. They wiped out the few guards. Now, I did double the number of guards that were there, or dragon claws, actually, as they were called. Slightly better. But it was still fun. Good time. They then decided to go down that secret passageway that was there. And this is where, DM note, they had made the friend and the ally with Eddie the Kobold, as named by Callie, and then had left him behind when they all ran away. I knew I wanted Eddie to show back up in this session, because this is one of the last parts that has a lot of kobolds in it, and it would make it for a good part for the kobolds to be, and to have a kobold show up. Also, I just knew that he would be a good part to play throughout this, and a good way of storytelling what's in the Dragon Hatchery, with it being completely plausible and without really breaking, the fourth wall too much. I picked 3 locations throughout the map that I knew Eddie could show up at depending on which ways the players went. And 1 or 2 of them was really cool, and 1 wasn't. One of them actually involved them coming across Eddie and a couple of the kobolds just past the fungus garden, or actually working at the back end of the fungus garden, where he had been put as basically slave labor. I've written it that he had been ostracized by the kobolds because he started the fight they couldn't win during the raid. He now even hates the kobolds, or at least doesn't like them. The party has treated him better. So when the party would have found him in the fungus fields, he was going to take the pitchforks and start stabbing the kobolds. So that would have been really cool, but that's not the way they went. They went the other direction, which is unfortunately the one where it was like, I'm just going to shove him here because there's no other place. This was mostly the side where the guards were. So he ended up in the treasure room. They found him. The party was ecstatic. Callie especially was ecstatic. Fire, our new Tabaxi rogue, being played by another 11-year-old girl, also super stoked to find a little dragon, and to find out that there's dragon eggs in here. When I found that out, both of the girls, the children I have in my group, I can't call them children, they're teenagers, okay? They're ecstatic. They're like, oh, there's dragon eggs! So this will be kind of cool. It got them really excited. Really kind of cool to see that just blatant emotion when you want to show it out of some people. I think adults sometimes lose that. So anyway, great to have that energy at the table. That was the other kind of kicker to come in. There was the fact that I actually had, Hare was being Skyped in, which if you haven't done that in any of your campaigns, I do recommend it. Get a decent laptop or a decent tablet. I do recommend picking up a 360 mic if you use a laptop. The Hare, who was the one who was Skyping in, gave me one, went out and bought one for us. I have a Blue Ice 360 mic, a little ball, and I'm able to set it in the center of the table, and she's able to hear everybody. It works really well. I highly recommend it. When the rest of the party's there, I'm actually going to use it to hopefully do some more of my recordings of the actual party. I'm hoping to maybe get some better quality out of the sound as opposed to just on my phone and mostly me and not the rest of the party. So I can hear everybody, as well as maybe be able to share some of that audio of our actual games with you guys. I've done it a few times when I did the Sinrath voice a couple of videos ago. So the other notes for DMing that I'll point out is the tiles that I used. I got from my wife for our anniversary. She got me dry erase tiles, which worked really well to be able to draw out this vast cavern. And I did about the first third of it going both ways because I didn't know which way the party was going to go after they killed off the guards. They could have gone down into the fungus, or they could have gone this way. So I kind of drew out as much as I could, and I'm going to have to erase some and keep going and putting out more as they go. We'll have to see. I've got some left from where they went. They only went through a couple of rooms. That's fine. We'll see how it goes. It all does connect, so I might have to redraw some stuff as they go. We'll see. I might also decide to not draw as much or do just the large rooms on the tiles, and then use the dry erase on a smaller version of the map that I might cover over with sticky notes or something like that to give you fog of war on a map that we laminate like we did when they were in the Raiders camp. just so I don't have to draw the entire thing, but still give them that visual aid of where they're going. I might also just play the whole thing, Theater of the Mind, and explain it all. There's a creature encounter coming up that I might just do Theater of the Mind. One, because I don't have miniatures for it, and two, I really like the concept of it. And they're so... It's going to be interesting. I don't want to give too much away because none of my players watch this, so, man, done. So the tiles work great. I highly recommend the dry erase tiles, especially if you want to be able to reuse things. I know that sometimes they do wear out, but the tiles, I will put a doobly-doo down of what the ones that my wife picked up for me. I really love them. But the only thing I don't like about them is I wish they connected like a tile piece more, or like a puzzle piece. But for the tiles and for the amount of stuff that I got, it's a great deal. It's a great buy. It came with also like tables and fallen logs and fallen pillars and stuff, and it's a really good set. I love it. I've used it a bunch of times so far. Awesome stuff. Highly recommend it. The one thing I'll point out when it comes to the DM side of things is other ways you can have characters pop in, which I haven't really talked about too much yet, as well as the ones come out. So we had the new character pop in, and I decided to have that happen as an infiltrator because she was a rogue, and it fit the story. Most campaigns I've ever run have had players leave in the middle of them and have new players join in the middle of them. It's just a fact of life. Especially if you want to keep a party going, you're going to have attrition. It just happens. So finding those ways to do it, and maybe you can come up with a couple that you're really good at or ways you really like to do something, like have somebody pop in or pop out. If there's somebody who is consistently not going to be able to make it because of life, and again, this is a game, and we don't want to make... It is a commitment. You want people to show up, but at the same time, you want them to feel bad. So I've found ways to make somebody come and go as needed, depending on the situation. I had one warlock once. Their patron kept coming in and snatching them away and then depositing them back into the group when they were done. It was totally plausible, especially if you have a real pain in the butt patron. I remember also having a paladin that would get called away constantly by their god. So, I mean, if they're playing one of those kind of characters where you've already got kind of that above them, then by all means, you can use that. Other things you can use, I had one that had a really bad case of like leftover Medusa skin we kind of came up with, where occasionally when they wouldn't show up, they became a statue. Gargoyles, that's where we got it from, which is kind of a coincidence because Disney Plus just launched. Anyway, but they were kind of gargoyle-ish, so they would freeze every once in a while. They would just end up becoming stone when they weren't there. And then the party had to figure out how they're going to transport a stone statue around in between stuff. I remember at least once they left her in the middle of a square. Totally fun, but you get the idea. It was ways to incorporate that stuff, and it's gonna happen. So have a couple of ways, and sometimes you can find ways like I did with Lutau, where it's plausible he went and go talk to the hunters. You can come up with ways that they leave or have other duties or find other things to do within the storyline that still fit. It's gonna happen. You might as well find ways to enjoy it or find ways to incorporate it. But at the same time, there's the Skyping in, like Naris did in this campaign, in this night. Highly recommend it. It was very easy. She sometimes does say she misses out on the socialization of being right there. And I usually I have a long table that I am sitting at one end, and I usually put the laptop at the other end so that I can see her, and occasionally she'll sit there and go, waving and get my attention. While I have a really good mic, I might end up using a speaker too, because I was just using the laptop speakers and it wasn't quite that loud, even though I think we did turn it up. But sometimes it can be a little hard to hear. But it does work, and it's, again, better to be there at least that way than not. I had one party that ended up Skyping in via their phone and then using a tablet, because I do use D&D Beyond. They would ever have their character right there in front of them and have us on their phone Skyping in, and because we're geeks, had her dice with her, so she was able to roll. It worked out pretty well. Better to have that than nothing at all, right? I mean, that's kind of the fun. I would hate to have a table of nothing but laptops all staring around at me. But for those occasional times when somebody still wants to be there but can't be there in person, it still works. And then the last one, how do you introduce new people into it? It's going to happen. If you want to have a party that constantly evolves, you're going to lose people, you're going to have people come in. You might as well find ways to do it. And each time it's going to be a little different. You find something that fits for that party. I've had people that were found inside of sacks because they were captured by raiders or by slavers. I've had them be part of the guard and assigned to them by whoever they were already meeting with for an NPC to get a new part of the mission, that they were originally an attaché from them and then ended up sticking around. I've had it be a hired hand they came across because they needed a new cleric and they went to the local temple and they hired one and he ended up begrudgingly going with them. Or like this end, where we have a rogue that just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and said, hey, you guys look like more fun than this is. Be versatile. Be willing to be flexible and change it up. And for the most part, most players are going to understand what you're doing, and they're not going to give you too much. I mean, give the player a little bit of, hey, you just joined us, rub, I'm going to make you have to earn your respect. That's going to happen. But for the most part, the players all want all the players to be there. Don't worry too much if you think like you're railroading a new character in at that point. That's one of the few times where I feel like if you railroad, like, okay, for this situation, we're going to be doing X so that we can have John play. Most players will understand it, especially if it's towards the beginning. I mean, you could have a better spot later on in the evening, but would you rather have John sitting around doing nothing for 2 hours, or would you rather get him in right away and everybody feels a little railroaded? I'm always going to prop for a little bit of railroading. Everybody gets to play now. Awesome sauce to me. That's kind of it for the DM notes. They got through a few rooms. They got through some combats. There really wasn't too much going on other than the whole not being here bit of it, which is a good time to cover that. Again, I'm Haven the Hare. If you want to help support me, by all means, click the links down below. Buy my card game. It's a 5-minute sword fight based on the Swords of Valour Lifesteal Combat Show. And, or you could buy one of my dice pouches. I do make custom dice pouches on Etsy. My Etsy store link is down below. They're out of chainmail. I do multiple different colors. I can do different designs and patterns. If you want, hit my Etsy store up. You can see a bunch of different ones. I also will put up a way of somewhere. I'll make a video of me making chainmail eventually, as well as some of the pictures of the custom work I've done and already shipped off to, who knows where. With that being said, thank you so much again for watching, and may you make all of life's saving throws. And invite the party. I'm gonna back this all the way up. Remy charges in first, throws her down. Throw the daggers.